Hello and welcome to another episode of Woodward Tigers here at woodwardsports.com. I'm Rogelio. Still alongside me is my esteemed group of podcasters, Chris Brown, Uper, and John, producer John, who is also doing some stuff over with the heavyweights. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. And also, please subscribe to the Woodward Tigers YouTube channel. We've been getting really good response on Twitter, so I want to thank everybody who's been following us on Twitter. John's been killing it over there, and we'll have some more content in the next couple of weeks or so. The Tigers are going to be busy after so whoever wins the World Series, essentially the next day, free agency will start. So there's going to be some lot of activity, and we'll get you covered on all angles. So tonight, by the way, because I've been running around my head cut off, essentially, there is Friars in the podcast will be joining us in about 15 minutes to talk about the hiring of the new scouting director, Mark Connor, and we'll get to talk a little bit about his experience with them. And the Friars on the farm are fantastic. They know their stuff. So looking forward to talking to them for about 15, 20 minutes. Right now, if you're watching us live on YouTube, we have the MLB Game Day cast on because I've seen streamers do this, and we can watch the World Series and hang out and have a conversation without getting fined to death. Because imagine if we were streaming the game, we would be immediately kicking off YouTube. So, but gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Not bad.
All good here.
Doing very well. Recovered from the Halloween weekend and all the frivolity that goes with that.
Yeah, Halloween. I don't know about you guys over there, but Halloween was very quiet over here. So we did not pass out candy this year.
Really? Yeah, I got home at 8 o'clock and there was not a soul outside, dude. Like, you wouldn't even be able to tell it was Halloween. It was crazy.
Wow.
Like, I don't know.
We had probably almost 100 kids come here.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
What time I heard it was like a 6 to 8. Is that actually a thing? Like, it's only.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what we did this year, yeah.
Okay.
Jeremy, good to see you on the YouTube chat, by the way. Did you have a lot of kids come to your house, Chris?
You know what? Tara said that she got rid of all the candy. There were, probably a couple dozen. I took Harrison to a different part of town, which was super packed. There were kids everywhere, even though it was raining. It was Harrison must have got like 15 pounds worth of candy, so it was a good turnout.
Nice.
So let me guess. You went to the part of town where they handed out full-size bars, right?
Yeah, there were a couple full size. That's what our neighborhood usually does because it's like the houses are kind of. It's like there's like 48 houses in our neighborhood, and they're spaced out enough that it takes like an hour and a half to hit them all. And so the people tend to just give out full size bars or whatever they have at Costco. Basically, is what they give. But I had like 2 people identify who I was, and like 8 people accuse me of being a walrus. So.
Wait. Oh, because of the mask. He was wearing the Danger Mouse mask.
I made a homemade MF Doom mask in about 30 minutes when I was like, hey, MF Doom, because he died on Halloween. I was like, well, this will be a tribute, but yeah. It did look like a walrus. I understand.
So I went into Woodward on Monday for Halloween. One of the questions that was first asked was, hey, how come you get dressed up? I was kind of stunned by it. I mean, it's because a lot of the Lady Jane stylists, because we also work with Lady Jane's is part of the whole Woodward Foundation. So, but we'll revisit that. And we're going to be talking draft here shortly our top 25 prospects, because there's a lot to cover there. But we're going to have, first and foremost, joining us now, we're doing a little live simulcast, so bear with us there. And it's Donovan from Friars on the Farm, a fantastic. I can't say enough about how much these guys know their knowledge about the San Diego farm system. It's impressive. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. How are you this evening? And do you have a rooting interest in any of these teams in the World Series at all?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. For me, with the World Series, I'm a National League guy. I know now with the Universal DH, it doesn't really matter, but still, I want the old league to win. Even though it's even better for us to be able to, tell all the Dodger fans that are still nipping at our heels on Twitter that that if we lose to the team that won the World Series, so be it. I with the World Series though, it's funny how, last night I was watching the game and all of a sudden, 5 2/3 inning, the little no hitter thing pops up. I'm like, holy shit, they got a no hitter going, and I was like, right the night before that they hit 5 home runs and were just they were just raking.
Yeah, and you know what? Let me ask you guys a question. I'm gonna ask everybody this question: is that a no hitter or not a no hitter? Because this stupid, I look, there's just some sort of hipster thing to be contrarian about. Well, it's 3 relievers and a starter, so it doesn't count. I'm sorry. Does it? Am I missing something here or what? What is? I'll start with you, Chris.
Well, yeah, sure. It traditionally it feels more exciting if it's one pitcher doing a no hitter because it feels like a singular feat, right? Although in every no hitter ever, they've also relied on the 8 guys behind them, or I guess 7 guys behind them and 1 guy in front of them. So I looked at it more as like, wow, a postseason no hitter. That's amazing. It's only happened. It's the 3rd time ever. Like, I don't care that it was 4 guys doing it. So I was fine with it.
What about you, Donovan?
Well, for me, even though, a pitcher has the advantage when, say a bullpen guy comes in, but, bullpen guy comes in and how often does he give up at least 1 hit? Out of the 3 bullpen arms last night, one of those guys usually gives up a hit. So I find the contrarian of like, oh, it's not a real no-hitter. Shout out to Jeff Passan. I find it more difficult for it to be a combined no-hitter simply because you have more chances with different arms of making a mistake.
That's a good way to put it. Uper, what about you?
Obviously, if you're going to rank postseason no-hitters, we'll give Don Larson the nod with the perfect game.
Right.
But otherwise, this is a no-hitter. It counts. The game has changed. 25 years ago, Christian Javier would have been given the opportunity to keep going. Okay. We don't do that anymore. And that's okay. We don't wear our suits on airplanes anymore either. Things change. So it was fun to watch. Donovan kind of noted it was so different from the night before when they smashed 5 home runs to be no hit. But what I liked was Schwarber after the game basically said, I don't give a shit. Who cares? We got no hit. Moving on. And I think that's the only attitude to bring. And of course he smashed one tonight already.
Yeah, I don't understand why teams keep throwing a high fastball at all. And John, what's the final word for you? You offer a completely different perspective than the 4 of us put here together.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel the same to me. Like, I feel like we're obviously going to remember it because it's a postseason no-hitter, but I just think, like, having one pitcher do it, I think it's just more memorable like that. Like, if you just look at, like, can you guys even name, like, some recent, like, combined no-hitters recently? Like, I can't really think of any.
Well, the Houston had one earlier this year by the same pitcher. So, yeah. And also one of the ones that I remember the most, and I watched this whole game, was it Kent Merker? Man, I'm dating myself here. Kent Merker.
Braves,
yeah, Braves. And was it, I think, Pena, or I don't know how Pena finished out. I can't remember, but it was like, I remember that combined no-hitter. That was, for whatever reason, that stood out to me because, it was also because Skip Carey's voice was doing the game. So, and the Braves had a no-hitter. So, it's, at any rate, yeah, so I have to date myself on that. But, nevertheless, so the Tigers hired a former Padre, and there was a couple of things about this. And the reason why I wanted to have you on this evening was Chris and I got in a debate with a couple of people about why Mark was let go after having a really good track record with the drafts and everything. And it's not that there's anything controversial about it, but I felt like that, again, some of the timing didn't seem right based on what was going on. So in your opinion, based on Connor did a really good job with that system taking over, and you saw guys that were coming out of that draft, like Dave Bernard, Ty France. There's, of course, James Woods. Robert Gasser's doing pretty well. But what was your initial thoughts when the Padres initially let him go?
Another really good question. I have no idea. And why would you let someone? Maybe he needed a greener pasture. Maybe it was something that, after letting go of Sam Geeney, that and having Riley Westman kind of take over, that maybe the whole organization needed a little bit of a mix up. and let kind of Mark build his own system, because he was hired back in 2010 with the Padres as an amateur scout, and then worked his way up through the system, or through the organization. Now I think with you guys in the Tigers, he's definitely going to be able to create his team. You'll have your guys that are there. He'll bring more of his guys in, and it kind of be his system more so than it was, like, say, AJ Preller when he was hired as GM.
So, Chris, that kind of talks to what you're speaking to a little bit, right?
Well, I mean, I guess we never really know. We could look back at the draft and see the results, but we don't know who was making the final decisions on a lot of those picks, right? And usually the guys at the top are the ones who have the most success, and typically those are the guys who might get picked by the GM. So, we don't know if that success is AJ Preller's or Mark Connors or what. But like, we don't have any other option without being in the front office. We just kind of have to look at the results and go, hey, those were pretty good. It seems, and his final draft with the Padres looks pretty awesome based on, the way Jackson Merrill has looked and James Wood has looked. So, but again, maybe that's Preller. Maybe he comes here and he drafts nothing but college relievers. It seems unlikely, but I know we'll see.
Yeah, as far as his MO goes, one of the things we noticed talking about the system is the amount of prep talent, high school prep talent. And we know that the Padres are really known for the development, but in terms of the philosophy of drafting prep players, that seems to be a organizational philosophy for quite some time now.
Well, with drafting minor league, with drafting high school guys, you get them early, you get them before they kind of create those things you need to fix in college. I was just thinking about Jack Zawinski, a 15-round guy out of high school in Chicago, and he's hit 15, 16 bombs for the Pirates this year, including a game winner, and he was a 15th round guy. I mean, he had a higher WAR than Eric Hosmer this year.
Wow.
And so you got, obviously, your top guys like Mackenzie Gore, Luis Campos, those high draft pick guys coming out of high school are obviously the ones that kind of stand out. But it's those 4th and 5th and 6th rounds, and the second day guys really that kind of make up the bulk of your system, and can those every year those guys pop up. Be a pitcher or Zawinski a couple years back in AA just started hitting bombs. I mean, just every episode, every week, we're like, all right, it's the Jack Zawinski show. He hit another 3 home runs this week. Those are the guys that really, really kind of make up your system, other than your top draft pick guys.
Yeah, and this is in. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just saying, I mean, that was one of our biggest complaints forever with the Tigers drafts, was that they were okay usually up top. They had some misses like everybody, but they just never seemed to find talent in the subsequent rounds. That was up until recently. They've done better there, but yeah. So that was one of the things that they needed to fix, basically, because you can't survive on first rounders only.
Yeah, and this is a system that we're looking at Tigers right now that are finally getting some sort of results from the bottom end of their system to a certain degree, mainly on the pitching side. It hasn't been on the positional side. And, Donna, the other question I had before we move on is, as far as, do you feel, in your opinion, that prospects are exactly that? Are they used for really kind of trade value? I mean, they're kind of currency. I mean, we've talked about this before.
The funny thing about with, a lot of people, especially on social media, have a problem with the Padres developing major leaguers. Sure, we can draft. Sure, we can evaluate talent. Our product can evaluate talent and get these guys drafted. But look at all these guys that got, that are in the major leagues right now. You got Cal Quantrill, you have Eric Lauer, Owen. God, I just had his name a second ago. We trade these guys, and they become major leaguers. They become integral parts of other organizations, and there's only 26 guys. So you're going to trade a shortstop. You're going to trade a pitcher. As sad as I would see Mackenzie Gore go, we got Juan Soto for that. And if they're not going to be, on your team, you certainly want to package those guys for controllable talent. And that's the big thing, is we have Soto. We have some of the Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, those guys. We had them for multiple years. So if you could, as they builds the system up, that becomes currency, to get those 2 or 3 year guys that you can that are major league already and controllable.
And you saw the results of that this year, getting deep in the postseason and beating the Dodgers. I'm sure was probably
it was our World Series, yeah,
and that's perfectly fine because honestly, the Dodgers came in 110, and my favorite line about the whole entire series was the Dodgers saying, "Well, we've been hot for the last 6 months," and it's like, yeah, should have said that,
right. And if an 87 win team wins the World Series, I love that. What did the Braves do last year? They didn't win 90 games, right?
Right.
And that's what I love about baseball is like any other sport, pretty much that top team is more than likely going to win. Very rarely do, not all the time, but, occasionally you get the upset in the playoffs. But with baseball, like it's usually whatever happens, whoever gets hot in the playoffs and whoever's hot at the time. And obviously every team is going to have those guys that pop up and kind of make a name for themselves.
And playoff success is something that you could always turn back on. It's just fun. Like, yeah, well, I guess we beat you guys. Like Tigers don't have a ton of postseason success to turn back on, but we could always look at Yankees fans and go, hey, I guess you guys have never beaten us in the postseason.
And Oakland.
Yeah, or Oakland. Yeah, well, Oakland I think beat the Tigers back in the early 70s. Right?
But didn't Anibal Sanchez kind of turn a good postseason run into a lucrative career and then our lucrative contract and kind of not do that well?
No, he was good for years, I feel like.
Was he?
He had a couple. Yeah, no, he got. So they traded for him at the final year of his contract. He was good down that stretch, and then they signed him to, I want to say, a 5-year, like $85 million deal, and he gave him 3 good years, at least 2 good years. One of those years he won the ERA title.
Yeah, 2013.
Okay. Yeah, but that was the other thing that kind of the Padres approach reminded me a little bit of the Tigers' last run of success, where Dave DeBrusk was the general manager, and whenever they had any prospects, he would get rid of them to get established big leaguers, whether it's Anibal Sanchez or Doug Fister, and plenty of other guys. And when I looked at that Padres rotation, I'm like, man, they traded for every one of ththese guys, and they used guys that they were drafted.
Yeah,
from Owen Casey to whomever. I forgot who they got to get Musgrove. Yeah, I was thinking of the prospects that they sent, but
the Yu Darvish guy, the Yu Darvish trade really sticks out with me. The one pitcher, the one major league pitcher, I can't remember his name, the soft tosser. And then we gave him a bunch of really lottery tickets. Sure, they were high dollar guys from the international signings, but at 17, 18 years old, they're lottery picks. And Darvish was just nails for us this year.
Well, and even like they played with their bonus pool to get Cole Wilcox that one year because he was a top 25, top 30 prospect, and they got him in the third round, I think.
Yeah.
And then they just turned around and traded him for Snell. Like, all right, whatever. So yeah, I thought that. I mean, again, those trades are Preller.
Yeah.
But the we think, or at least Connor, but maybe you can shine a light on that better than we can.
What was that last part? You broke up there. I'm sorry. What was that? The last part?
Oh.
It broke up.
Nothing. I was just saying, like, you would know better than we do if Connor had any say in that.
It would definitely give him a few years, 3 or 4 or 5 years to get his team in place, to start drafting guys, and really, I love Detroit. I love teams that have been around for a real long time, and much like you guys, the Padres for so long they were the underdog. They were just, it was a stop on the way to the playoffs to going through Detroit, and for the Padres. And only recently has the Padres' success been just been coming up. And the funny thing about what we've been saying as fans is you spend the money, we will show up. I mean, 5 years ago, you saw Will Myers jerseys, and a little bit before that, like Chase Headley was the only jersey you ever saw. Now you go to Petco Park, and it's Machado, Tatis, Musgrove, Snell. The day we went to the game, the day that we traded for Juan Soto, and by the end of the game, I saw several Juan Soto jerseys already out. And so many more of these games were sold out during the middle of the week, like a Wednesday game. We used to get Monday night tickets for the season, and we love Monday nights because there's like 15,000 people there. park. You show up about a half an hour before game time. You get a park spot right across the street. Now you got to get there 3 hours ahead of time, and and lines for everything.
Yeah, but that energy is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's nice having a team that wins, man. It's really nice to have, to love your team and see them be successful.
When the Padres came to town earlier this year, I was walking around trying to get some people to talk Padres, and I saw two, not one, but two Terry Kennedy jerseys.
Oh,
that to me is hardcore. I mean, I remember Kennedy more for when he played for the Giants because it was I think he was in the Bay series. But I know of course, he was part of the '84 series, but I was too young to remember. But I remember Kennedy as a Giant, and it was just astonishing. And like I expected Craig Nettles, of course, Tony Gwynn,
right?
But then what was astonishing was there was a Mark Thurman I think he was number 30. I think he was for the team.
Oh,
Mark Thurman. Who the hell wears a Mark Thurman jersey walking around Comerica Park? I couldn't believe it.
Did he end up with the Tigers?
Yes, he did. He was with the Tigers in 88, 80, or no, maybe 87. I think he might have been there for the, I think Sparky wanted a veteran. I can't remember what year, but yes, you were correct, Uper. So, but yeah, Padre fans have good energy. Sorry, go ahead.
I would want a Randy Jones jersey. When I was a kid, I loved Randy Jones.
He had a perm. He had the best perm. He had the best perm. You guys, look, I mean, I know some people in our audience are like, who the hell is Randy Jones? Well, Donna, go ahead and explain the history and the greatness that is Randy Jones.
A crafty left-handed pitcher, man, with the fro that you just with the fro, dude. The funny thing is, growing up as a kid, I played Little League. I'm left-handed. I had blonde curly hair growing up, and I used to tell all the kids that was my dad was Randy Jones, because my last name was Jones. And he was our, after Dave Winfield left, he was kind of like our first Cy Young Award winner at all, and kind of like the first Padre really to put that team on the map, almost in the modern era. Nate Colbert, when we first became an expansion team back, the year I was born in '69. But Randy Jones, even still today, you see him, albeit fantasy camp in January, he'll be out there. He's at the ballpark every day. He was our best player for so long.
Sure.
That stayed with us.
Yeah. By the way, Google, do yourself a favor. Put Randy Jones, Padres, Google it, and check out the great set of hair. I mean, again, the hair is fantastic. It's just, if we weren't multi-screen the screen right now, his nickname, by the way, was the Junkman. Junkman. So there you go.
Junkman. Yeah.
That's a cool nickname. So,
hey, Donovan. Next year, do you see the Padres adding a bat, or do you think they're just going to rely on hopefully getting Tatis healthy and making that the major addition to the offseason?
That's a really good question. We need to. I think Profar stays. I don't think Manny opts out. I think Drury might have just hit himself into a bigger deal than normal. I think we would sign Drury to a couple of year deal. We do need, Trent Grisham has got to step it up. Gold gloves are gold gloves, but if you're hitting like 197, in September, it's not going to fly. And, with guys, as much as I liked Ha-Sung Kim at short, his bat left a lot to be desired, even after improving from last year. I think we do go out and get a bat. It might involve maybe trading a pitch, a friendly contract with Jerickson, Profar, or Grisham. But we'll see. We definitely need another bat. And having Tatis back, and God, it's a whole other episode for me. It is going to be huge. And what I think it really showed Tatis was, we don't need you to go to the playoffs. Like, you're a part of a team, not the team.
Sure.
And I'm hoping after this PED suspension that, he stops listening to his dad, that he gets better people around him, or at least makes better decisions.
Yeah. What about a guy like Jose Abreu? There's rumors that he could be leaving the White Sox. I mean, could you imagine that lineup of Abreu, Tatis, Machado, and Soto?
He plays first base, right?
Yeah, he could DH or play first, because I know Josh Bell's a free agent, right?
Yeah, and I don't think we keep him, but I'll tell you what. I was in Chicago for about 12 hours. And we went to a wedding, and the wedding was at night. So we went by Wrigley, and Wrigley, they were out of town. We went to a White Sox game.
Ooh.
And they gave Abreu dolls out that day.
Oh, really?
Oh, nice. Nicely done.
Is it fake? We don't know. He's going to be expensive. And I think we might want to save a little bit of that money to maybe sign Juan Soto. Now, having those words come out of my mouth as a Padre fan is still foreign and kind of doesn't feel right. And I'm not sure how I feel about, giving that guy $30 million. And he's been phenomenal. As much as he struggled here after the trade deadline, he was just, every time we went to the game, he was having fun, laughing. And it seemed, in spite of Tatis, it seemed more genuine almost. After everything that happened with Tatis, it just seemed like that we could build a team around that guy.
Yeah, as a Tigers fan speaking, I wouldn't mind if Jose Abreu was out of the AL Central. I wouldn't.
Yeah,
mind.
there's a couple people. There's a couple people in the chat that feel the same way. One of the questions, another question I was thinking about this was, Manny Machado's back. Are you worried about the back? Because we've talked about right now, we always talk about how back injuries are always kind of persistent. They just stick around. They don't go away. Is that something that you're concerned with going into 2023 for the Padres?
No, I mean, Machado has been everything that we've wanted in Machado, the maturity, the leadership, the engagement with the fans, the back. I'm sure he's been around this game for a while, and he will do everything to get that back straightened and ready for 2023. The big thing with him was when did he get hit? He got hit. And fouled the ball off his foot. That was the big thing. Or I think he got hit by a pitch. I can't really remember. It was so long ago. This year when he got injured, and he should have been on the IL. He should have been out for longer than 10 days. And he took about a week off and came back and struggled for a while. But then, after he healed up, it just became Manny Machado. We're going to get a good 4 or 5 more years out of him of high production, I think. And then, 35, 36 season, we may see a drop off in some of that stuff, but he has been everything we've wanted in a signing with him.
So currently, by the way, just as the game right now, Verlander walked Brandon Marsh to get to Kyle Schwarber, and Schwarber walked. So the bases are loaded now for Philly with 2 out here in the bottom of the second in a 1-1 game. So yeah, it's Verlander's not having the
Verlander with 1 swing and miss, and Syndergaard has 7, just as everyone predicted.
Well, I mean, this is a guy. This was essentially what a bullpen start for the Phillies, essentially.
I mean, I'm sure they'll use Syndergaard as long as he's effective. But yeah, I mean, he's not the guy that he once was, but he's looking like it tonight so far.
Yeah, there's only one start in the World Series. He's won one more than Justin Verlander has. So there's that. But
I wonder if Verlander's hurt.
It could be the case. I mean, again, is his velocity down? I don't think his velocity is down though. So that's
he was hitting 97, but I think they had like two mound visits. Is he done? I'm just checking the game day and the Twitters. Anyway.
So Donovan, before we let you go, what's going on with what do you guys have planned for 2023? What's your big goals?
We get the winter meetings here this year. So I was supposed to go out to the Arizona Fall League this last weekend, but I just couldn't pencil it. I got the credentials and I just couldn't pencil the money to get out there. I'll contact some guys through social media. I got some people lined up for interviews after the season's over in the AFL. Then we have the winter meetings here. And then that's usually when I get, I'll find other people to talk about. We have the minor leagues have now unionized. So that's a really big kind of topic for us overall for Friars on the Farm and for minor league baseball. So we'll be talking to some people from more about baseball. Probably going to reach out to the guys from Advocates for Minor Leaguers, Henry and those guys, or Harry, sorry, and those guys at the winter meeting, see if I can't talk to them and find out what's going on with that. But that's what we kind of do in the off season.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot. I know there's GM meetings next week in Chicago, I believe, too. So plenty of going on around. But Donovan, thank you so much for taking the time.
League, and we have the winter leagues,
man.
and yeah,
it's like I said, it's just getting warmed up here, and I'm pumped for the off season. But Donovan, thanks again for taking the time to talk some Padres baseball with us. As Mark Hunter is now, looks like we're in good hands. Apparently, the Tigers will be in good hands.
He's a grinder. You guys are going to love him after. Just give him a few years to get his, get his people in place, and I think it'll be great for you guys. I want to see the Tigers go back to their former glory, man. I know as much as you guys do, but it's I'm tired of seeing Tampa Bay and the Yankees, and it's kind of fun watching the Red Sox kind of tank. But I want to see the Tigers come back.
That'd be nice. Something out of Central. And Verlander gets a strikeout and gets out of the second inning with no runs. So,
cool.
But Donovan, thanks again for taking the time. We'll talk to you soon, man.
Great talking to you.
Bye, guys.
All right. So Donovan, who was over at Friars on the Farm, great podcast. And speaking of the minors, by the way, it is time to talk about the top 25. The Tiger Minor League Report top 25 is finally out.
Wait a minute.
Well, here's
Finally, we're the first people to publish one.
Wait a minute. Here's what I was saying with finally, because we've been working on this
That's true.
on and off, to be fair, since the end of August. But a few things have happened. One, in terms of prospects we had originally in the top 25 actually graduated. So that was a change. Two, Erie got in the playoffs. And I think that with Erie getting in the playoffs, it threw off, almost 3 weeks of our normal time that we would be preparing for everything. Personally speaking, I didn't have a full-time job, so I was just kind of you think to yourself, well, hey, you have all this free time. Not necessarily. Didn't work out that way. And I just had other priorities, but now I'm full-time. I don't know. Well, most people in the audience don't know this, but I am now the web lead manager for Woodward Sports and continue to do my staff duties as a writer for the Tigers and all baseball. So Chris is, by the way, working with us now. And the next step is to have young John work with us too in a paid capacity. So, but yes, so a lot's been going on. I mean, these days have been 10-hour, 12 days. And also I'll be working for the secondary company, but that's another story for another day. But anyway, so a lot of things have been going on with the top 25, and we had this. We also have help. We have Jerry and Manny, who joined us over at Tiger Minor Report, and Manny's done some good work. Did I say no?
Martin?
Manny. What the hell's wrong with me? Manny. Sorry, I was thinking of Manny Machado. So we did get some help on that, and I think the list was fairly done. We've got some notes. The profile, so there's individual profile things we did, and I will be making those. Hopefully, I'll be finishing those and finally finish up the report on the pitchers side of things for West Michigan this weekend. And there is a lot to digest with this report. But one of the things that I think that was funny to me was when I put the picture up of Colt Keith today, I realized it doesn't even look like the same dude we saw in May. Gentlemen, I don't know if you guys saw the picture or not. And it was one of those things where I picked the picture. I'm like, wait, is this the same dude? John, have you seen Colt Keith, this picture? Let me I'll put in the chat. I'll put this in the chat here on our YouTube channels and check out the picture for Colt Keith. I mean,
We call him Colt Beef.
Colt Beef.
He's added another John Kloss to himself.
Yeah.
Damn, dude.
So we made him our number one prospect on the list. We got a couple questions about that, but I'll have Chris break it down the top 25. The best thing about this list, majority of these players on the top 25, we could say this with 100% confidence. Outside of Peyton Graham, let's see here. So outside of Peyton Graham and Christian Santana, we've seen everybody on this list live. Everybody.
Yeah, you have. I haven't seen Campos live.
Oh,
you
sorry.
did.
Yeah.
You did, though, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I did. Yeah.
So that's technically true. We have, I don't know. We've done this before. We did this at MCB. It was the same process. You was involved in that, I think, where we would take just everybody's opinion, get everybody's opinion about the top 30 prospects in the system, and then get an average. It just feels like the fairest way to do it, right? So it's not.
Right.
And then we, when there were ties, we had some discussion about how to break them and stuff like that. And yeah, it just came down to, I don't know. It's an interesting system now. There's not that kind of huge standout like there had been the last couple of years with Torkelson and Green, and before that Manning and Mize and Skubal, right? So, but there are a handful of guys who are very interesting that are top 100 or top 100 adjacent type prospects, and it was just a matter of trying to figure out how to stack them up. And Raj, I think you had Keith number 1 back when we did our rankings in like August, and yeah, just as the season wore on and as he's performed in the Arizona Fall League, it's made more and more sense that this guy should probably be our number 1, just based on his ceiling and how comfortable we are with his floor, as it were. He just looks like he's going to hit, and he's got enough power to hit for impact, and he also has a very good idea of the strike zone. He's not going to be like a 15% walk right guy, because if there's a pitch in the zone that he can drive, he will, and he'll drive it to all fields. That's probably the most impressive thing I've seen from Colt Keith, is his ability to take a pitch away in the strike zone and hit it incredibly hard away. He'll just hit it the opposite way at 105 miles an hour. And some guys, Torkelson among them, will just not swing at that because they can't drive it to where he wants to, but Keith can. And but that also means that he's not going to he'll probably have a ton of at bats where he gets a hit on the second pitch, but he'll also have a bunch of at bats where he works like an 8-pitch walk. It's just he's going to swing when he can drive the ball. So I don't know. I'm in our private discussion, I made some irresponsible comparisons, but I don't know if I want to bring those out on air.
I think you should, honestly.
Well, all right, no, that's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
I said there's a 5% chance. There's a 5%. So if you take 100 Colt Keiths, exactly where they are right now,
And you pick out 5 of them.
5 of them will end up as Rafael Devers.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
The 95th percentile outcome for Colt Keith. He's roughly the same size. Devers is a little shorter, but he's a lefty who is aggressive in the zone, isn't going to walk a ton, but also won't strike out a ton. Probably not a great fielder. That's my main concern with him at third base. Is I don't know if he can stick there.
He's got a good arm though.
Velocity. He crushes the ball, and yeah, he's a guy who could hit 280 to 300 maybe in his prime with 20, 25, 30 home runs.
Yeah, see why I did that is now I have a clickbait title. Colt Keith is the next Rafael Devers. So thank you.
Stone Cold Lock.
Stone Cold Lock. Look, as far as Colt Keith goes, what I saw him in Lansing was exactly what you were talking about with that opposite field power, Chris. Remember that game where he took a pitch? I think it was against that junk ball or lefty that Lansing was throwing, and that guy fooled everybody but Colt Keith. And Colt Keith was able to take a pitch that was just kind of, spit again. I think it was Jeff. Was it Jeff Chrysler? I think it was.
Yeah, hey, Criswell. I don't know.
Yeah, Criswell.
Criswell's the righty.
Oh, I'm sorry. But there's some. No, you're right. But I just think of some just junk ball guy that was just baffling. Like he threw his lowest, his highest is what 84, 85. What it was, or something like that. Anyways, takes a pitch from the outside corner and just smokes it. Absolutely smokes it to left field. But I also, in the field, I understand where we've talked about this, maybe possibly put him in the outfield at one point, but I do like his arm. He has good range on his arm. He makes safe throws. In other words, he's solid defensively, and we've seen him, I think, collectively 6 times in the last 2 years, and he can hold his own. I think defensively, he's not. Is he going to be an infielder long term? The way he's growing, he might be Jim Thome at this point. Who knows? Maybe a DH, but first base. But go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you finished your point. I don't want to cut you off there.
I was just going to say, I think that overall, his glove is not a bad thing. I don't think. I think his glove doesn't do him any harm, but I think he's not going to. He doesn't get any reps in the outfield from as far as I'm concerned, but. The Tigers don't have anybody in their system currently that can hit for power in the outfield above Double-A. I think that's fair to say. Is that fair to say, Uper? You think?
Yeah, I believe that's probably very fair. The whole thing, I agree with having Keith up top. I think this is the right spot at this time. I mean, obviously, we're basing a lot on a couple of months of high production, but it was a very impressive couple of months, and he showed no signs of slowing down before that injury. So I think he deserves to be where he is. It's interesting, we just spoke with Donovan from the Padres site about going with high school players versus college guys. And it's so interesting that in that short draft of 2020, when they took Keith with their last pick, he was their sixth player. I remember very clearly sitting there thinking, man, they have enough bonus money. They could take a high school guy. And I didn't think they would. I really didn't, because that just wasn't Avila. But they did. So I'm always wondering, did Avila make that choice? Who did? I mean, where did that call come from? Because certainly at this point it's working out, and it was kind of a deviation from their standard methods.
I think from what we heard and what we've seen this year, I think there was two schools of camp when it came to that particular draft. And it's more evident now after Avila left. I mean, there's one of the things that I get my manager talked to Ryan Darko, who, by the way, if Ryan Darko actually listens to this podcast, we had a lot of fun with his Garco polo, and props to Joey Kavanaugh from Erie, who came up with that in the Tigers Discord. It was, I haven't laughed that hard in a while, but again, it was all good fun. But it was something that he said when I managed to talk to him in the press box about some of these guys were just going to get bigger and stronger, and that's made a difference. And you saw that with Parker Meadows, who also made some he's up high on our list. And even to a certain extent, Winslow Perez, who was kind of thicker in the legs, but he got kind of, you notice his arms, he was a little bigger this year than he filled out quite a bit. I don't know about Chris. I don't know about you. If you thought that Winslow looked a little more filled, or
he was definitely sturdy. He was in his man body now. I think. I mean that's one of the things that's always a little bit hard to project. You can look at somebody's body and say, all right, he's going to put on a bunch of weight, or he's going to get bigger and stronger, but you never know for sure. But yeah, Keith has definitely put on some weight, and he's done it on purpose. He said as much. He said he wanted to. He looked at guys in the big leagues, and he wants to hit 30+ home runs like they do. So he was like, I'll just get big. And that's it's like my main concern is this defense, but I don't think it's so bad that he can't survive in the big leagues, right? Like we saw Miguel Cabrera play third base. I mentioned Devers. Austin Riley is not a Gold Glover with third base, but I think the Braves are okay with him over there because he crushes the ball. And Colt Keith could be that, but left-handed. So, I mean, there's a lot of optimism there. And one of the big things that we talked about this, had he not suffered that shoulder injury, he would have been in Erie probably within the month. And I think he probably would have done really well. After he probably would have needed some time to adjust. But his approach and his bat to ball skills are very mature. So I think he would have been fine, after an initial adjustment period. He probably would have finished the year with 20+ home runs. And I think he would get more national recognition at that point for being a 20-year-old in Double-A doing that.
Yeah, I really believe that. I mean, after the last time I saw him, and I kind of waited to see what was going on after the shoulder and just see who would maybe come up and make an impression. One, there's two people I'll talk about that in a second. One being Isaac Pacheco, and the other being Jackson Jobe, and I'll explain why in a minute. But in terms of hitters across the way, in terms of Christian Santana, he was injured when I was down in Lakeland, but I know his numbers are impressive, and I know a lot of people like Christian Santana, and unlike some other organizations and lists, we actually see all the players. I just want to mention that again, just to be clear. But there is, with Christian Santana, for doing what he did this year at the age of 18 is impressive. He's turning 19 this year, but still, for us, I wanted to at least see Santana. I know Santana's a real deal, and I know there's some people asking why wasn't he not higher in the top 3. And but I think it's nitpicking a little bit, because right in front of him is Wilmer Flores, who had a really good year.
I think we were awfully aggressive with Santana based on the track record, but it was enough to impress the hell out of us, I think. But yeah, I mean, we got a bunch of questions about the list. I don't know if we could hit those up? I don't know. Was there any other pressing baseball topics we wanted to hit before we got that? We also got some regular questions too.
Let's start with the minor league that, but the one I wanted to finish my thought about Isaac Pacheco, because Pacheco was one of those two where I was so it was a lot of what I liked about this year most was like when I would tell Chris, like, oh man, I saw a player down in Lakeland, and this happened last year too. I'm like, man, this is really good, and Chris is like, all right, like Chris being the calculated, logical human being, we'll see here. And then within 5, like Pacheco was of all the years we've done this, Pacheco was the quickest. You're like, oh shit, he is legit. Oh man, wow, he's a man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was one of those things where like, okay, that's what they look like. That's what they look like. And then he performed in front of us. And that's a huge, like, you can try your best to not be swayed by that, but when you see a guy do something that's super impressive, it's hard to go like, all right, let's give him more time to fail. When you see Isaac Pacheco in his third at bat at high A hit a home run the opposite way, you go, all right. And then you come back the next game and he crushes like a 430-foot home run. You go, okay, like this is all right. He's 19. Let's think of things that are wrong. And it's like, oh, all right. Well, he doesn't hit a home run in every at bat. Other than that, he's really impressive.
Reminds me of when he first got drafted in his draft class. There, our friend Nick Mishler here in Iowa, who was the coach of Austin Murr, was telling me that Murr told him after just a few batting practices that Pacheco is the most impressive hitter he's seen. It didn't take him long to make that determination. And Murr has been to the College World Series. He's seen a few guys, so it was interesting to hear that.
Yeah, how about like Pacheco versus Colt Keith? Like, you guys definitely think Colt Keith has advantage right now?
So part of that, honestly, to be completely honest, is just Keith, us seeing a little bit more of it from Keith, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we actually got a question about that, and I actually, that was one of the most impressive things about seeing Pacheco to me was how smooth he looked on defense at third base. Like he's another guy I wouldn't call him a Gold Glover because he's just so big, so he's not going to be somebody who's just coming in on a ball and making barehanded plays and stuff. But he didn't skip a beat, like just handling routine ground balls, handling tough ground balls, making strong throws, accurate, turning double plays. Like everything looked legit. And Colt Keith has had a few hiccups when I watched. It's just, for me, Colt Keith is a better pure hitter. Isaac Pacheco looks like a potential above average hitter too. But Keith just has that extra, like just a little extra. You see it in the way he approaches at bats and the adjustments he makes and how much consistent hard contact you see from him.
Yeah.
But it's close. I mean, we have Pacheco? Do we have Pacheco sixth? I think he's sixth on our list.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and he's a guy. It would not shock me if he's number one next year. I mean, he could go actually absolutely ham, based on he's got an advanced approach in above average hitting ability, and he's got probably more raw power than Colt Keith. So it's just just a little bit more we've seen out of Keith. I think that's at least my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
For sure.
And I think the big difference for Pacheco, what stood out to me defensively was at first down in Lakeland, we saw in the Jackson Jobe start, he struggled. I mean, he struggled at short. It looked like he was just kind of, his hand, like clumpy hands, or I'm sorry, clumpy hands is a bad word, but stone hands, and they just his throws were a little erratic. But then towards the end of his time in Lakeland, in any games that was televised, even and when I saw him up close, it was a different player, and he started getting better on the defense. And something that I remember him talk about this when we were at West Michigan in his debut, saying, "Well, I'm learning golf now because I want to, and it's going to help him with that high-end coordination." He's not even 21, and he talks. He's got a velvet smooth voice in the mic. I know Dan Hasty was talking about this, the voice of the West Michigan Whitecaps. I mean, he has bass in his voice. I mean, he really just, but all jokes aside, defensively in Lansing, those first couple of games was pretty impressive considering, we've seen Andre Lipstius over there at third. And I thought that, again, really great arm. and you put him up at shortstop with. I think we saw him with Soretti, didn't we? At one point.
Who, Pacheco?
Yeah.
Probably. I don't. I mean, Soretti was in West Michigan for
Like a blink of an eye.
He was there when Job was there, so yeah, we
Yeah.
probably saw them all together. Soretti was there for like a hot second, and then was off to Double-A.
Yeah, that's another story. So that another high riser. Soretti, just by the way, if you're talking about did he make our top 10, the answer is no, but it's okay. I mean,
He was 20th.
He was 20th, right behind Andre Lipsius. So, all right, Chris, let's go with the questions on the top 25.
All right. Well, we got John Lumpkin. It was the first one. He said, "Is Colt Keith a top 50 prospect?" And we're assuming he means in all of baseball. What say you?
If you look at the top 50 right now, so it depends on the list, right? So if you're looking at Baseball America has, I don't want to say preference, if you will. But Baseball America does a really good job of balancing out their top 100 and making the top 50 is somewhat of a big deal because there's some history, or some trackability where they're going to make the majors. And so if I'm looking at their top 100, you looked at Riley Green, who's been up there, has been among one of the tops in there. I think he's right on the border of it. I don't want to put him on top 50, but I look, Colt Keith. Look, for all the times we've done this, guys, as a collective. I know, John, you're still relatively new to this, but I'm really, really stoked about Colt Keith. Like, it's just something that, like, again, his demeanor, his ability to back up what he's doing, and just say, "Look, I know what I got to do." And he's had this work ethic. But look at like guys like Jordan Walker. There's Anthony Volpe from the Yankees is in the top 10. Marcelo Meyer, which kind of, again, Tiger fans go, boo, there's Jackson Jobe. Where's Jackson Jobe? So Meyer's in the top 2. And then you have like Drew Jones. It's already up there in the top 20. Eli De La Cruz. And look, is he better than Robert Hassel III? Yeah, I think he is. But I mean, it's hard to tell. But look, I think he's just right on the cusp of it, really. I know it sounds like a cop-out, but no, screw it. I think he goes in number 49, 48. I think he's better than – is he better than Pete Crow Armstrong or Brendan Davis or Elijah Green, who are in the last parts of the top 50? Maybe. I think he can hold his own.
I think what will happen is if he comes out and has a spring anywhere close to his spring of last year, that when they do their prospect reshuffle at midseason, definitely you can see him in the 30s and 40s, somewhere in there, if he does it again. Just a little bit more on his track record, and I think he's there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Chris, what about you? I mean, what do you see him as a top 50 right now? Is the defense that holds him back a little bit?
Were you saying to me or John? Sorry.
Oh, you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going through and I was counting. So I saw 37 position players in the top 50 at Baseball America, and I wasn't quite able to count them, but I would guess 28 to 30 of them are up the middle defenders: shortstop, second base, catcher, outfield. And I think that's one thing that just kind of, you have to be a very, very special corner bat to be a top 50 prospect. And you have to. And even guys like Riley Green, people projected him as a right fielder, but he was playing center field. So it's like, all right, well, give him a chance. And Colt Keith is not, I don't believe, he may be a second or third baseman. I don't believe he's a viable second baseman in the big leagues. So it just, it's just that slight adjustment there where he's just not all the way at the top of the defensive spectrum. So it's a bat first profile, which sometimes can, it's the top 50 prospects, that's pretty lofty territory. If you want a guy there who can do just about everything. And I don't think Colt Keith is quite there, but I would be comfortable putting him 75 to 50, I think.
All right. Yeah, I mean, again, and John.
That's a good question. Who would be I wonder if you go around every organization in baseball, who has the lowest ranked number one prospect in their organization? How many number one prospects are in the top 50?
That's a good question.
Well, yeah, some teams have like 0 on the MLB pipeline top 100.
Yeah.
A couple of them.
Yeah.
I know the
Who's the
MLB
one
pipeline is
top
a little
prospect right
differently than the rankings than Baseball Americas, because for example, Pete Crow Armstrong's number 1 on the Cubs midseason top 30, so he comes in now in the lower 40s, and so somebody like on the Reds, for example, Eli De La Cruz is, I believe, in the top 20 on Baseball America's top 100. So the Reds have, or actually the Reds really have a lot of talent in their system based off essentially, rating, trading every veteran they have, or everything that was put the kitchen sink to get these prospects, but still.
Yeah, I tend to follow MLB pipeline pretty closely, and they have Jackson Jobe ranked 38th, and they have Wilmer Flores 100th. So, just for a little context.
Yeah,
MLB pipeline tends to be a little I don't want to say homerish, or how would you say it, Chris?
I mean, all the lists hew pretty closely to their, particularly if they also do draft coverage. They stay pretty close to their draft rankings, at least for that first year or so. So that's why you'll see Jace Young on top 100 lists.
Oh yeah, he also,
because he was like a top 10 draft prospect to them. We have a slightly different opinion there. Who just hit a home run?
Jeremy Pena hit a home run.
Jeremy Pena. So there was a guy who wasn't. I don't believe Jeremy Pena. If he was a top 100 prospect, was he in the back end of the top 100?
I don't think so.
I don't think he was a top 100 prospect at all.
Let me take a look. He may have sneaked in there in the last year or so.
Yeah, that's a good. You know what? Let me look that up now. Yeah,
but I'm looking right now. But any event, yeah. I don't know, what were we talking about.
Oh, just yeah.
Pena was number 72 this year.
He was number 72. Oh, I don't remember him at all in the top 100.
Well, he was one of those guys who just kind of gradually got better and better and better and better. And by the time he was ready for the majors, he was at his best. And they were like, oh, well, all right, he's a prospect. Now he's not a prospect anymore because he's in the bigs.
This is true. I mean, this guy was drafted out of high school, by the way. He was hitting 340. I mean, his numbers were pretty good in high A, and he went from high, huh?
Pena?
Yeah, he went from
he was drafted out of the University of Maine.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went to high. Sorry.
I mean, I don't blame you. Who comes out of Maine?
Yeah. If you're a hockey player, that's one thing. But
there you go. Yeah. The
Bears.
Yeah. The Bears.
Bears. Yeah.
Anyway, so wait, that was our first question. Is Colt Keith the top 50 prospect? Did we all get to answer that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so Steve Cook had a question for us. He said, I thought Roberto Campos would be higher. And he said, your top 3 spot on is Santana. Is Santana just based on potential? How close are him and Isaac Pacheco?
I think for the reason why we have Campos a little lower is because one of the things that I noticed down in Lakeland, and this is something that was coming through, was he's not getting a lot of air on his ball right now. This guy has a lot of power. He's hitting the ball really hard. He was one of the top guys in low A that was hitting the ball over 100 miles per hour. And so that's progress considering where he was last year. And I think actually, to be honest, I think having him where we're at now on the list, which is number 16, is an improvement, because last year he struggled to be consistent. And I think his walk percentage, everything's gone up this year. So personally, I think Campos at number, I couldn't really put him over somebody along. Could I swap him out with Peyton Graham? Certainly.
I think,
but I want to see more of that power, get more air on that ball.
Let me look. Yeah, because again, remember we did this as a collective,
right?
And so
I think I had him higher.
I had Campos 12, and Rogelio, you had him 13.
Yeah.
So we were a little bit higher on him personally, but as a group, he ended up coming in 16th, I think.
Yeah.
And you nailed it. It's for me. He's such an interesting case because for Tigers fans, it's like a rare treat to have this international player who is doing anything, right? And he ended up with a WRC plus of 101 this year for what he's 19, I guess he was this year, which is, again, pretty rare for Tigers fans. But I was looking, and it's not all that rare for the rest of baseball. There are 30 players who did that this year. 30 19-year-olds in low A who performed that well this year, including Christian Santana, except Christian Santana had a WRC plus of 123. So he was 20% better than Campos and younger, and also playing the infield rather than the outfield. So that's like Santana has showcased more patience and as much, maybe not as much raw power, but when he hits home runs, they go a long way. And so I think there's just more potential there. Or he's closer to reaching his potential is the best way to put it, I think. Campos has a lot of potential, but sometimes guys just cannot ever fix their swing plane, right? Like Yandy Diaz never has. He hits the ball just about as hard as anybody in baseball, but it's never in the air. Eric Hosmer never hit the ball in the air. There's some guys who just can't do it. And so he'd be higher for me if I were more confident in him being able to do that. And I just haven't seen the proof of it yet.
All right. What's the next question as we move on here?
We got this is something everybody can answer from Epic. What do you guys think of Scott Harris's front office hires so far? So give the rest of the guys a chance to chime in.
For sure.
Sure. You go ahead, Uber.
Yeah, I think, obviously, you look at Metzger and some of the others, Carlson from the Padres. I like the fact that Harris is going into many different organizations to build his group, and not just people that he's was working. He's not rating just the Giants to build his staff. Get the best practices from some of the more successful organizations around the league. I think it's really hard to argue with that. So to see him go into San Diego and Tampa, that works for me.
Yeah, it is a little too early to tell right now, but definitely getting a guy from Tampa Bay. I think they're kind of the golden model in baseball for how you want to build your organization and develop players. So I think that was one that really stuck out to me. So far, so good. Obviously, time will tell, but there's not much to complain about right now, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, Raj and I, we made videos. Epic, if you want to go check our YouTube page, we made videos for both of those guys to get our reactions and our opinions. Like, it makes sense. That's always good, right? That's a good start. Like, hey, that makes sense. That's better than just Scott Harris hiring a bunch of his old buddies, right? Like there were a lot of talk about him maybe hiring Jason McLeod from the Cubs, who I think was also with the Red Sox before that. And that doesn't seem to be the case. Like you said, he's reaching into other organizations and finding guys who seem to have particular skills that the Tigers lacked. And in this case, Harris himself kind of lacks. Like, he's considered brilliant and great at a lot of things and being able to pull everyone together and pull in the right direction. But he doesn't have a terribly strong scouting background. So his first assistant GM is a scouting director, and then they hire another decorated scouting director. So I think that's a good start, because that was, those were some of the first firings that he made too. So it just, putting two together, it seems like he really thought the scouting department needed a big overhaul. And so I think, they could have done a lot worse than hiring these two guys. That's my opinion there.
Yeah, and one of the things we predicted was going to be a scouting overhaul, because not to say that all the scouts in the system were bad or anything. We talk about several that stand out, and the system overall in the last 3 or 4 years has shown improvement. But at the same time, it has to be a complete organizational philosophy change, or else things are never going to really change. So, no, like I said, I have no problem with what's going on so far.
All right. Well, here's another question for everyone from our old friend Deadly Ninja Bees. What are the odds that 0 teams wanted Chafin at the deadline? And
0.
Then I'm going to ask where did Pacheco and Keith play in the bigs and what's their ceiling? But yeah, that Chafin. We didn't bring up Andrew Chafin. He is opted out of his 2-year deal, so he's a free agent again. What are the odds that nobody wanted him at the trade deadline? What do you think?
0.
We have a consensus there? Yes.
I would hope so.
I'm sure he was in some level of demand. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right at the deadline, was he having a small injury? Was there an injury there?
He was injured at the beginning of the year. I think near the deadline was when we found out that he was unvaccinated and couldn't go to Canada.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was it.
Because they even asked him, like, hey, if you had to go to Toronto, would you get vaccinated? And he's like, I don't know.
I just think in these situations, the thing we'll never know is, was the best offer that was possibly out there, did they judge that higher or lower in value than the odds of him wanting to stick around for a second year? You can't answer it. Certainly now in hindsight, now that he's leaving, you'd say, yeah, they should have dealt him and got what they could get. But, it's just a hard, there's a lot of things we can fault Al Avila for and they're all worthwhile. I mean, they're all legit, but I'm not sure about this one.
Yeah.
I would agree with Cameron in here in our YouTube chat. And I agree with the real market wasn't as hot as people making out to be at the deadline. I completely agree with that because here's the thing. There was a lot of teams that were making these blockbuster trades for primarily offense. I mean, there's, of course, the Phillies right now, Syndergaard was a prime example of the opposite of that. But as far as the Tigers went with Chafin, again, we've heard firsthand that Avila was asking for the moon and the stars for some of these guys. So it could be the case where he was overvalued by Avila. And then again, the trade deadline was like a fart in the wind because the Tigers traded they have a guy from that ended up being in low A. And then it made sense yesterday when we saw that, or earlier this week, rather, I'll start over early this week, when the Tigers re-signed Miguel Del Pozo, who had a really good year in Lakeland. He did. And I am totally losing the illusion here. Actually, I'm just going to turn this off because this is driving me nuts, actually, quite frankly. But there is I think one of the things that Miguel Del Pozo had a really good year in Toledo. Is he going to resign and he opts out? Who knows? Maybe he does. I don't know. But I know there's a lot of people who want him back, and rightfully so. The guy was effective. He was effective against lefties, was effective against righties. But then the Tigers signed Del Pozo and a lefty coming off injury in Sean Gunther, who had some really good numbers in the minor leagues before he got to the major leagues with the Marlins. He is a lefty, so that makes sense. It seemed like they're stockpiling, so they're going to look at what he has. He has really good numbers in terms of his possible swing and miss stuff, but the Ks are not up there yet. He was walking quite a bit, but down in AA and AAA for Florida, he was doing really well. So I don't know. I think the Tigers might just move on. That's just me, though.
One of the things that's really hard to know is how much was Al Avila even involved in the trade deadline?
Yeah.
Like, was he already on the way out? Was he basically excommunicated? Was he fighting like hell to keep his job? And did he think that the Tigers just had a horrible string of bad luck this year and he could get one more year and having Chafin back was key to next year? I don't know. Maybe Andrew Chafin's told Avila he was coming back, and then when they brought in Scott Harris told Chafin, we don't want you, or the other way around. Like, it's so hard to know. I do find it impossible to believe that there weren't teams checking in on Chafin. He was one of the best left-handed relievers available. But yeah, and it's also like, you just don't know how much the Tigers valued him. I mean, they got Sawyer Gibson-Long for Michael Fulmer, who is probably a number 7 starter at best.
Yeah.
And what's the other? Chris Anglin for Robbie Grossman. He was among the worst players acquired at the trade deadline, according to people who rank such things. So they did very poorly at the deadline. And again, that's like, was Avila just getting what he could? I don't know. Was he trying to look active just to make it seem? But yeah, I don't know. It's a bummer to lose Chafin for nothing because he was good. But it was his prerogative to opt out, and he did. So the Tigers lose him, but they get Scope back. Scope opted in.
Shocker.
Hey, if I was him, I'd do the same thing.
Oh, yeah. That was a no-brainer for him.
Yeah, and I find it hard to believe he's going to be as bad offensively next year, but he probably won't be as good defensively, so it'll probably just be a wash.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was, too. I was going to make the initial joke that there's a $7.5 million bonfire of money, but it's not that bad. I mean, he likely will, as you say, hit better. He's shown in the past that he can bounce back from a down year. And really, if they build a decent enough lineup, if he's someone who's batting 7, 8, 9, and he has one of those 5-week benders where he can carry your team, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't need steady and consistent from him. If he's great for a month, okay, well, we can deal with that.
Yeah, we know Scott Harris likes the platoon, so maybe we could see him as a platoon option next year.
Yeah, and they may even move him around the infield more. And then, Deadly Ninja Beast, his other question was about something like basically you talked about earlier, John, which was, Pacheco and Keith. He asked where they're playing in the majors and what's their ceilings. I think that Pacheco, I talked about it before, that my worry was that he was going to get so big that he was going to have to play first base. But after seeing him, I think his bat is advanced enough for him to get to the majors while still playing third base before having to transition to first. I think he'll break into the bigs as a third baseman. And I bet Keith does too, but I feel like down the road his best position is going to be right field. But again, that's just me kind of being the low man on his defense, I think.
Yeah, I both think they're going to be major league players. I think Keith still ends up as a prediction, as a out of the box prediction. He'll go in the outfield. We'll see.
All right. Matthew C. said, do we know what the change at the top means for international signings? I assume they'll do better, but it's probably not that simple? Question mark. Well, I mean, we know that Rob Metzler is going to be in charge of the international scouting now. That was something he didn't do at Tampa, but it's part of his purview now as their amateur scouting director. So that part will be different. But they held on to Tom Moore and forgive me, I've forgotten the other gentleman's name. One of the heads down there of international scouting.
Rojas.
Is it Rojas? That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how much different it's going to be. One thing, I did have kind of a Twitter conversation with Eddie Bajak, Tiger's Twitter personality, who kind of pointed out that the Rays and the Padres are pretty well known for being very active in the international market. The Tigers just went and got 2 guys from those organizations. So maybe there'll be some improvement there, but you can't tell for another 3 years generally because most of the deals have already been signed or agreed to.
Also, we did see the Tigers were scouting a pitcher in Taiwan, which is that never happens. The last time the Tigers signed Futeni, I don't know how they came across Futeni, but he's the only Taiwan pitcher the Tigers have ever scouted or had in their system. And I think it was one of those. I think it was on Twitter where they were talking about teams interested in this pitcher. It said Giants, Cubs, the usual suspects, and then Tigers. And I was like, what? Well, that just happened. So you're right. You're absolutely right, Chris. I think there's going to be no stone unturned. Maybe we see next great prospect come out of England. The reason why I said it is because the World Baseball Classics coming up in March. Yeah, Jed. World Baseball Classics coming up, and Great Britain is in the same pool as the Americans, I think. So,
that'd be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be
payback time for 1776, but also payback for 1812.
That's right.
Some sort of tea thing, but anyway, all right.
They're going to hire the Hessians.
So
maybe 5 people will get that reference, Super, but I'm glad you did it. So
was there? Yeah, everybody get to chime in there on the international signings. That's just going to be a long. We won't know that for even longer than the draft. Here's one from a new name, PFN EW Media. PFN New Media. PFN New Media. Good stuff about our list. How much of a prospect is a player who's already 23 and not in the big leagues?
That's a damn good question.
He's still a prospect. I don't.
A lot of guys get drafted at 22.
Yeah.
So a lot of it depends on position and other things, but I don't start holding age against anybody until I see a 5. Then I start to wonder.
What? Oh,
20, I see 25. I got to
25.
worry.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were saying 50.
I still got a good fastball, John.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I have probably about a minus 60 fastball.
Yeah, I tend to think that the absolute upper edge of being a prospect is 27, and you see a guy, a 27-year-old, like once every few years that pops off. But yeah, to your guys' point, like not every 23-year-old is created equal, right? Like if you're 23 and you're in low A, then okay, I'm not super excited. But who was the top prospect in baseball this year? Adley Rutschman.
24.
Adley Rutschman was 24.
Yeah.
Justin Verlander, he debuted at 22, but he was 23 in 2006. Chris Bryant, I think, was 23. Like, if you're drafted out of college, like you said, you're 21, sometimes 22. I think Danny Soretti was 22 when he was drafted.
Yeah.
Brant Herter might have been 23 when he was drafted. So you can't hold age against these guys. You know, some of them have different circumstances. They've been injured. They took another year to develop.
COVID related now too.
The COVID year. You know, we always say that the good ones come quickly, and the best of the best high school players get drafted at 18, 19. But some guys don't turn into who they're going to be until they're 23, 24, 25. And really, I mean, we see pitchers all the time who don't reach their final form until they're in their 30s. Like, you don't consider them prospects anymore. But yeah, if you're 23, I think is a completely reasonable age if you're in Double A or above.
Yeah, Jacob deGrom won the Rookie of the Year when he was 26.
Yeah,
So
that's a great call. Because deGrom was a position player in college, shortstop. I think he might have been a closer a little bit. And I think he blew out his arm, and then they tried him at pitching. Like, oh, look at this. The most talented pitcher of all time. So, yeah, it's you got to look at it on a case-by-case basis. You don't ever just paint somebody because he's 23 or 19 or 26. It's, you know, what was Yu Darvish a prospect when he came over? I think he was 25, 26. It's not the same, but you know, you can't paint everybody with that brush. And then, Raj, did you jump in that?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then the final two, they're kind of similar, so I lumped them together. One is from Tony Drogemuller, possibly Tony Drogemuller. He said, what I'm seeing from this list is that no one is ready for Major League Baseball next year, which means a long year, barring free agent signings. And then Ryan asked how many of the guys in the top 10 debut for the Tigers this year. So I viewed those as kind of similar. I don't know if you guys have the list in front of you. If you could.
Well, Wentz will be back, right?
Yeah, Wentz and you would think Wentz and Kreidler, who are already in the majors, they now Kreidler's not in the top 10, but
yeah,
you know, I mean, I went through and looked, and I found 12 guys who could plausibly, not counting Wentz and Kreidler, 12 guys who could plausibly make the majors this next year, if something breaks right or if things go terribly wrong, you know. But I viewed 5, I think 3 to 5 as pretty likely. I think we'll see Andre Lipsius in the big leagues at some point. I think we'll see Parker Meadows. I think we'll see Wilmer Flores probably at some point.
Olsen?
I think Olsen, he got a great chance to come up too. So yeah, I mean, and then like Elvis Alvarado, possibly, you know, he's a reliever. He could pop right up. So there are a handful of guys like, and just, you know, it's an adjustment period. We saw Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson have to try to adjust. So I don't picture anybody coming up and you know, blowing the doors off, but who knows? We talked about it before. Like, you know, we have Colt Keith number 1. We think that he's going to go to Double A. He might hit his way out of Double A by June or July. He could be in the big leagues in August. It's possible. I wouldn't predict it, but it wouldn't shock me either.
If Parker Meadows is hitting home runs and, you know, doubles and triples at Toledo, why isn't he a Tiger by, you know, mid-June?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's been basically a full year in Double A and played very well. So he's going to be in Toledo, you would think. So, yeah, I mean, I think you'd be foolish to go into 2023 expecting prospects to guide the Tigers to a winning record. But we're going to see a bunch of these guys, I think, and some of them might end up being decent.
I still think it's going to be a prospect that's from another system that's going to make a standout. I think you said that before, Chris, and I don't remember the context you talked about it, but I think if the Tigers are going to make a trade, I think the Tigers are going to be a little more active on the trade market than they were the last 3 years combined in the offseason. Yeah. They've been very quiet. I mean, of course, the Tucker Barnhart trade comes to mind, you know, a couple things really, but I think the next prospect they come up that could make an impact and we could see some significant time, it's going to be either an outfielder or a pitcher that's going to come up. I really believe that.
Who are they going to trade for that guy?
You know who they're going to trade for that guy? They could trade Candelario. They could trade. Here's the thing: they could trade Candelario. They could trade so they signed Jonathan Scope. Okay, they could trade him, flip him for somebody. If they maybe have some people in mind already. The thing is that I'm not expecting a top tier prospect for returns on these, but maybe it's a guy they identified. Like I think about.
I gotcha.
Yeah, so there's maybe somebody in another system like we really want this guy.
Someone who's ready to blossom.
Yeah, ready to blossom. Right, exactly.
Well, I'm with you. That I can see because I look at that major league roster. I mean, the reason they had a quiet trade deadline back in August is because it sucked.
Yeah,
you look at the roster now, and who was a guy outside of Riley Green and maybe Torkelson yet if he has that kind of cachet, if he hasn't hurt himself. Who could bring back a top 100 prospect? I don't know if anybody can. Scooble's hurt. I don't think he does it.
Right. But
I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is something Aurelio and I talked about just in one of our regular chats when he was writing about Gunther. Is something I think that Scott Harris likes to do, and something I think he's probably pretty good at. Is he goes after these guys who are kind of post prospects, and part of that has to do with their age, right? They're the 25 to 28-year-olds who are stuck in the upper minors and other organizations. And maybe they're not viewed as legitimate prospects anymore, or maybe they never were, but he's able to look at something or his analysts look at something and say, hey, we think we can make this guy useful. And
isn't that kind of how Lamont Wade ended up in San Francisco?
Yeah. Well, they traded for Lamont Wade. They, I think Mike Yastrzemski, I think they traded for him. That was probably before he was there, or they signed him. Darren Ruff, we talked about. There's just like a handful of guys that they just kind of find something that they can maximize and make useful. And I think there's going to be a lot of, who's that guy? Who's that dude? Like, Mike Papirsky and Sean Gunther, and who's the other? They've already claimed one other guy, right? Isn't there another 40-man ad they made?
Not sure.
Or was it just those two? I thought they added another guy, but in any event, it's going to be a kind
of catcher. Are you talking about the catcher?
Papirsky is the catcher. I thought that there was another one between him and Gunther, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Okay.
But I mean, I just think it's going to be those types, and I think, they are probably technically still rookies or not necessarily prospects, but I think one of those guys may end up being the most impactful rookie next year, and he'll be 27.
Look, I just want something impactful. It doesn't matter where it comes from, but I again, there's going to be. I don't, me, Uper and John. I think you guys know me long enough to know I don't make sky in a pie. Well, they're going to trade. Here's the thing: they're going to trade Jeremy Candelario and get Pete Crow Armstrong from the Cubs. I'm not. Come on now, really. But I don't. It's just going to be one of those things where they're going to churn. No rock will be unchurned. No boulder or same thing. Duh. But they're gonna look everywhere. They're gonna look everywhere for guys that fit.
They're gonna shake the trees.
Shake the trees. There you go. You know what they're gonna do? They are going to. It's gonna be like Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. They're gonna go in there and somehow take a bag of sand, be it a bag of baseballs or the contract of Jonathan Scope, and try to do a quick scoop out before a rolling ball comes at him and all that. I don't know. I'm making really bad movie analogies right now at this point, but
so Palacios was the other guy I was thinking of. He was actually.
I totally forgot about Palacios.
Yeah, but he fits that mold, right? He's like a mid-20s guy who kind of was just somebody else's 40th man.
Power. Yeah, what power 1.2, right?
I think he had 1 year where he hit for power. But yeah, I don't know. I just I think those are going to be the more, instead of giant splashy free agent signings or trading prospects for prospects or big leagues for prospects. I think we're going to see a lot of mid-20s players who are kind of not impressive on the surface, but that Harris is going to give them a try to see if they can do something, and if they can't, he'll get rid of them. That's one thing. He's going to cycle through a lot more players than Avila did.
Well, would it be cool, by the way, if St. Louis has a couple players they have to make the Rule 5 decision on, right?
Sure.
and they end up getting like they end up getting. For example, I did find it interesting that Pedro Pages, who is Rule 5 eligible, is a catcher. He was out there. He's 24. If it's
there are two Pajes out there.
Pajes, it's Pajes. It's the Cardinal version. You also have a guy like there's two Rodriguez's that have to make a decision on Luis and Julio. Both are catcher, first baseman types. So you never know.
They've released a ton of outfielders who went on to be good elsewhere, like Adolis Garcia.
Yeah.
They're just like, we don't have any use for you. He's like a 3-win player every year now.
Yeah, they have right now. They have a couple, and again, they have some Rule 5 decisions to make. And again, maybe none of them are ready for big league rosters, but still, nevertheless, like I said, I'm excited for once to be on my toes, because if you would have told me that they would have signed a guy off the Marlins who was on 68 DL, or IL rather. Yeah. Did you want to say something? I'm sorry. I think you were.
Oh no, I do. I have something to bring up, but only if we're done with the questions.
Are you done with the question?
That's all.
Okay.
We got.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you, everybody. That was a lot of great questions. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Did you guys see the White Sox made their hire?
Yes.
Pedro Grifol.
Grifol. Yeah.
Very interesting. I don't know if you saw some of the comparisons. They went and found Rick Hahn's intro press conference with La Russa.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked like it was a hostage video. And his quote was about La Russa. He said, "It is believed he's the best choice." He didn't say he believed it. He said, "It is believed that he's the best choice." It's kind of cryptic, but read between the lines as you will. Today, the difference with Grifol was, the quote was, "We couldn't be happier to have him." He was gushing. He was gushing like a teenager the day after he loses his virginity, like John did, I'm sure. But come on, lad, that was funny.
It caught me off guard. That's how I was like.
That caught me off guard, man.
But anyway, Han just kept going on. He was so excited about Grifol. So you could just see in his mind, he was like, they let me make this choice. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But for one day at least, all is well in Chicago.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we got and who was the Royals have a new manager too? What was his name? It's hard to say for me.
Don, caught me off guard.
Yeah, they hired him today, I believe. Wasn't it?
Was it today? Like, let me see.
It's a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Maybe they made an announcement today then.
Matt Quatraro.
Oh, Quatraro from the Tampa.
Quatraro.
Bench coach from
Pedro
Tampa.
Quatraro.
Yeah.
Pedro Guerrero.
Yeah. So there we go. We got the 5th inning of the World Series. Halfway through.
Let's finish up and let's watch the rest of the World Series there's a stat that came out that in a 2-3-2 format, whoever the away team who wins game 5 coming back home wins 76% of the time. So
I would think that the winner of game 5 wins almost every time.
Yep.
Just regardless away or home, based on it, just feels like you just need one more win basically.
Yeah.
In a 2-2 tie. But then again, what was the Houston Washington series where the road team won every game, which is always going to be wild to me.
It's all about baseball. You cannot predict. You cannot predict. We saw 2 shutouts. We've seen 2 shutouts this series. We've seen a game that we saw a no-hitter. We've seen a game where 5 home runs was hit. That's why baseball is awesome. I know that people say, "Oh, baseball's dying," and blah blah blah. But
as Bill Paxton said to Helen Hunt and Twister, you can't explain it. You can't predict it.
Nice.
That's right.
Rest in peace, Bill Paxton.
Yeah. Chet
Chet.
from Weird Science.
Oh, also in True Lies. He was really funny in True Lies.
Yeah.
He was a car,
True Lies, underrated role there. Yes.
Yeah, very car salesman.
That gets him wet.
On that note, all right. Thank you so much for listening.
Episode title.
the episode. There you go, John. That's your. That's going to be the episode title right there. Thanks so much for listening to Woodward Tigers. Of course, check out all the great content over at woodwardsports.com. Click on the news tab. Check out all the great content we have coming out. We have Sean Murphy did a really good job on a Kate Cunningham piece that just dropped. We also have the podcast shows, the heavyweights, the morning show, Big D Energy, Armani Edwards with Maz. As again, what took up a lot of the week was Michigan State. Mel Tucker came to a press conference with Gardy because he got death threats. Craziness. Yeah, craziness going on across.
I wonder if can we go like a week without public figures getting death threats?
Yeah. Can we go a week with can we please go a week where Twitter, now that under the overlord of Elon Musk, that people can stop bitching about it? Good God, just I look.
No, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's just also, by the way, I'm next week. Hopefully, we'll probably be doing a show, but there's what's going to happen next week after Tuesday. All the political ads are going to stop.
Yes.
Hopefully,
because I came home today. By the way, I had no joke 7 flyers on my window or my door. 7 flyers. So
yep.
2 weeks in a row, I had a candidate knock on my door during the Packer game. I was like, I don't want to vote for any of you now.
Yeah, sacrilegious. Like, what do you do? Wait a minute. How would they not know on a Sunday?
Well, I mean,
They don't know their constituents. Not at all.
A lot of Packers fans in Iowa, though. I mean,
oh yeah,
well, football fans. Period. Though. I mean, I'm assuming Iowa. Of course, you don't knock on a Saturday because everybody's at the Iowa game or watching Iowa or Iowa State. But I was assuming that if you know your audience and if you have all this demographic information, how the hell do you know when the content would go on somebody's house on a Sunday?
I don't know. If I were a politician, I would go around with beer and hand them out to people watching football on Sundays. I'm like, here, I'm going to watch a quarter with you, or watch the series of Browns, and I'm out of here.
Yeah,
I wouldn't let that guy come in.
Yeah,
you make it 6 houses and then you die.
Yeah, have some nachos with either shredded cheese or liquid cheese, because a grown man can make a decision on what kind of cheese he can have.
Damn right.
Give me both.
Give me both. Yeah,
I'll take shredded cheese. I'll take liquid cheese. I'll take kind of pasty cheese in the middle. I don't care.
I know there's some people out there who hate liquid cheese.
What about cream cheese? Where does cream cheese fall into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
No more cheese debates. John, thank you so much for putting up with their old man debates here. And we'll be back next week, hopefully with some news. Like I said, I think the
World Series will be over.
Yes, the World Series will be over. Baseball season will be officially over. And the free agent frenzy that will be, it could be the Tigers making big moves. It could be the Tigers signing 4 guys you never heard of.
Xander Bogaerts.
Oh.
We all have pipe dreams, Uper. We all have pipe dreams. We'll see you next week. Have a good week, everybody. Cream cheese.